to give you a sense of continuity, let me tell you that actually in the second speech of Satan, where we stopped last time, he was proposing to Beelzebub that they should not lose their heart, they should not really submit or yield before the Almighty, right? And rather, they should take it as an opportunity to wage war against God, because most probably the thunder and the lightning that God used against them in throwing them out from heaven to this hell, most probably God seemed to have withdrawn that. So now no lightning, no thunder has been pursuing them, and God might be either very satisfied that yes, he has won the battle thoroughly, or might be he is at this moment not so serious in punishing them further. It is better that they take this opportunity, assemble again, and start a fresh war against God. That is where line number 180, that is where we ended in line number 180. So I now shared with you the text, and you can find it. Here it is. Let us not slip the occasion, whether scorn or satiate fury yield it from our foe. Seest thou yon dreary plain? Now suddenly, he is talking to Beelzebub, somewhat dismayed, somewhat unhappy, and could understand what had happened to them, what really hell meant, what really the loss of heaven meant. And that's the reason he says yon. Yon means yonder. Yonder is over there. Seest thou yon dreary plain, forlorn and wild? So it's a sterile, widespread hell where nothing is there. It's all forlorn, it's all secluded, it's all abandoned. The seat of desolation, void of light, save what the glimmering of these livid flames cast pale and dreadful. So he means thereby that in hell there is only desolation. Desolation is sorrow, hopelessness, despair, void of light. There is no light, save for the glimmering of these livid flames cast pale and dreadful. Glimmering of these livid flames means because of the thunder and lightning. Where the thunder and lightning struck, there still some light is glowing, and that is bluish in color. That's the reason it's livid flames. Otherwise, the entire region of hell is dark, absolutely dark, enveloped in darkness. Then says Satan, thither let us tend from off the tossing of these fiery waves. We have already read that hell is a place where there is liquid fire, fiery waves. So it's a kind of a liquid and yet full of fire, and it must be singeing, must be burning them, and they must be suffering. Satan proposes to Beelzebub that it's better if they can move from here, their rest, and mark that, he says their rest if any rest can harbor there. We have already read earlier in the description of hell, Milton has very categorically said that hell is a place where there cannot be any rest, there cannot be any hope, there cannot be any light. And Satan himself is full of doubt whether hell can really have any rest. He says, their rest, if any rest can harbor there. So let us move from here and take a break, if at all they can be allowed some rest. And reassembling our afflicted powers, consult how we may henceforth most offend our enemy. So he is not yet defeated, at least mentally. This is what at least he wants Beelzebub and other followers to believe, that yes, they have lost this battle against God, but this is not the final defeat. Still, what they should do is they should reassemble, and they should once again start talking about what they still can do, our own loss, how repair, how we can make good the suffering, the losses, how we can repair our damages, how overcome this dire calamity, what reinforcement we may gain from hope. Right? That is, let us be optimistic. Look at this, Satan like a hero, like a champion. He is arguing that they might be defeated at this moment, but they should not surrender before God, and rather what they should do, they should once again think in what way they can continue their fight, and they can, whether they can still have some hope that in future they would really harm the Almighty. If not, what resolution from despair? So what renewed strength we may gain from hope? If not, what courage and determination we may gain from despair? So there, in fact, the second speech of Satan ends. I stop sharing here and go back to you in case you have any question to ask me before I proceed to the next part. Do you have any question, or could you understand everything?
So as you said that there's liquid fire in hell.
Yeah.
But in your PPT, I have read that if hell is bottomless, then how can there be liquid thing?
Actually, you are arguing in a very normal way. I mean, when you use your logic and say that yes, if hell is bottomless, how can there be a lake? Bottomless is actually an adjective which is used by Milton to give us a sense that, well, the suffering is endless. So you should not really take it literally. In fact, try to understand that the very concept of hell and heaven are more metaphorical than actual. So it's all just for our concept that he is using different adjectives, right? So yes, hell is bottomless, and yet there is a lake, and that lake is full of fire, liquid fire, and Satan and all his followers have plunged into it. They are inside it. They are burning all the time, constantly. And Satan now advises that they should rather try and move out of the lake and go to some place where they can at least expect of some rest, some reprieve, so that they can reassemble, they can just get back all the still intact strength in them and try and think about continuing their fight against God. Am I clear? Could I make it?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Now,
so, aren't we gonna have your PPTs anymore? That's very helpful.
that we will discuss later on. Okay, so
Okay.
proceeding from therefore, so let me presume therefore that we have ended successfully, and I have more or less made you understand lines up to 191. Now, once again, I move to sharing my screen and showing you the text starting from line number 192. And in fact, from line number 192, we find it is the description of Satan. Like earlier, we have the description of hell. Now, from line number 192, Milton goes on to describe Satan. Okay, thus Satan, talking to his nearest mate, with head uplift above the wave and eyes that sparkling blazed. His other parts besides, prone on the flood, extended long and large, lay floating many a rood in bulk as hues as whom the fables name of monstrous size, Titanian or earthborn that warred on Jove, etc. So now begins the description. Satan talked to his comrade who was nearest him, that is Beelzebub, and his head was raised above the waves, and his eyes burned brightly, while the rest of his body lay prostrate on the lake. It extended, mark that, extended long and large, and so big is Satan, so big was Satan that his body extended over a vast area in length, extended long and large, lay floating many a rood. Rood is quarter of an acre. Lay floating many a rood, in bulk as huge as whom the fables name of monstrous size. Look at that particular adjective, monstrous. This is something very important for all of you to underline, because monstrous is related to monster. Okay, as whom the fables name of monstrous size. And importantly here, all of you have to keep in mind the different adjectives that Milton is using to describe Satan. And he is also using different words to connote what kind of a size Satan had. So now his just head was above the wave, and all other things were still prostrate, and he was very, very monstrous in size. So monstrous that Milton could compare Satan with Titanian or earthborn. Now try to understand, actually, Satan is so vast in size that he was like those who were mentioned as of extraordinary size in classical stories. We find a reference to Titans in the Greek mythology. The Titans were the children of Uranus and G. Uranus means heaven and G means earth. They were 12 in number, including Kronos, Hyperion, Rhea, Oceanus, and also Prometheus. The Titans rose against their father Uranus when they were instigated by their mother G, and they made Kronos. Kronos is the other name of Saturn, the ruler in place of Uranus. However, subsequently, Zeus or Jove or Jupiter, same name, who was the son of Satan and Rhea, revolted against Satan. And in this fight, Titans sided with Satan, and with the help of thunder and lightning, hurled them from heaven and imprisoned them in Tartarus. This is the reference. Here you find the earthborn that warred on Jove. Mark that. That is the reference of Jove is here, Satan, or Jove is here, Jupiter, or Zeus, who was the son of Satan and Rhea. Brairos is another titan, one of the elder titans who were 100-handed, right? So Uranus had thrown his elder sons, including Briareus, into Tartarus. And here you have another reference to Typhon. Typhon was a monster with 100 serpent heads. Okay? So you have all these figures mentioned by Milton as to indicate the gigantic size of Satan. And one thing that I would like to share here, that in a Homeric simile, we start with a comparison between two objects, say, for example, Satan and Leviathan. We will find a reference to Leviathan a bit later. So just two things, two objects are being compared. In Homer, what we find, that the comparison starts between two things, and the second thing grows until it eclipses the first. Milton develops the simile similarly. Now, come back to the text. So here, don't get unnecessarily confused. Here, all these references are just to indicate the monstrous size of Satan, Titanian or earthborn, that warred on Jove. Briareus or Typhon, whom the den by ancient Tarsus held, and that sea-based Leviathan. Now mark that. Here is a second reference, second comparison with Satan. And now you have the first epic simile, that sea-based Leviathan, right? So Satan is being compared to the sea-based Leviathan. Actually, earlier in the story, we learn in the Bible that Leviathan was a crocodile. But here, Milton uses Leviathan in the sense of a whale, which God of all his works created hugest, that swim the ocean stream. So here, Satan is being compared to the hugest of the sea animal, Leviathan. And the comparison continues. Him, happily slumbering on the Norway foam, the pilot of some small night-foundered skiff. Now, try to understand, the simile is very elaborated in nature. I earlier told you the specialities of epic similes. Now, here is the first case that you have to understand how and why this simile is effective. So first we learn that Satan is so big in size that he can perhaps be compared only with the hugest of creatures, that is Leviathan. The comparison continues. Now we have another characteristic of Satan. Him happily slumbering. Slumbering is, when you doze off during the daytime. You are not completely asleep. You are just dozing off. So that is a kind of a siesta, happily slumbering on the Norway foam, the pilot of some small night-foundered skiff. Night-foundered skiff, you have to understand, night-foundered means overtaken by night, and skiff means light ship. So what happens sometimes, because of the darkness during the night, the pilot or the captain of some small ship gets misguided. So they lose their way, and then what happens? Deeming some island, oft as seamen tell, with fixed anchor in his scaly rind, moves by his side under the lee. This is that very interesting description. So this beast is, Leviathan sometimes is mistaken by such captain who has lost his way on the North Sea, and they mistakenly take Leviathan to be an island where they could take temporary rest. So, as the story of seamen goes, and it happens that the vessel is their ship, is moved or anchored by the side of Leviathan under the presumption that Leviathan is an island. Fixed anchor in a scaly ring moves by his side under the lee while night invests the sea. While what happens? Night envelops the sea, there is complete darkness, and wisp morn delays. And the desired morning, is still to come. So they are waiting for the morning to come, and for the time being, they think, okay, fine, because they have lost their way, let the sun shine again so that they can understand which direction they have to go, and temporarily they take rest on the body of Leviathan. So what happens then? So stretched out huge in length, the arch fiend lay. Now, before we consider and continue these lines, let us try to understand what is the implication of this epic simile. Now, that unfortunate ship pilot who mistakes Leviathan to be an island and tries to anchor his ship on the body of Leviathan, what happens? Leviathan, after a while, when the ship is anchored on its body, it overturns itself. And just as Leviathan overturns itself, you can visualize anything that is on its back gets drowned. And then Leviathan eats up, devours all human beings who are there on the ship. So try to understand, whoever trusts Satan, the implication is that whosoever trusts Satan is to be damned, is to be doomed. Just as the ship pilot who mistakes Leviathan to be an island anchors his ship there, and then the Leviathan overturns, resulting in the drowning of the ship with all the people around it on it, and Leviathan devours them one by one. Similarly, see, whoever trusts Satan is deceived and is certain to be doomed. So that is the implication of the epic simile. Okay, now here you have, so stretched out huge in length, the arch fiend lay, chained on the burning lake. Still he is chained, and the lake is burning, nor ever thence had risen, or hid his head, but that the will and high permission of all ruling heaven left him at large to his own dark designs. These are very important lines, and that's the reason I have highlighted them. I earlier told you that in the design of God, whatever we do, including Satan, is as per the design. So I'm free and yet not free. Not free because this is the design, and yet free because within this design, I am permitted limited option. Satan also, mark that, all ruling heaven has given this permission. Look at this, permission has been granted to Satan. What permission? Left him at large. At large is that freedom, right? So on one hand, he was chained, he was dumped in hell, he was under the chains, bound, and yet got that limited freedom so that he could work on his own dark designs. Mark that. And if you remember, I told you earlier why this freedom was granted to Satan, so that Satan would
So
not.
that Satan,
You want to say something?
you want to say something?
Any problem, anybody? Could you understand what I'm saying, or should I stop? You have any question, anybody? I have not muted anybody, so you can always unmute yourself and ask me questions if you have any. You have any question? Otherwise, I'll proceed. Okay then. So let me then proceed further with our discussion. Now, Mark, I said that Satan, with his vast size, was just outstretched there, and by the very special kind of the design of God, within this captivity, he was allowed a certain kind of freedom. Why? So that he could work his own dark designs. Mark that. Satan would be damned. Satan would suffer. Why? Don't forget, what was the motto of Milton in Paradise Lost? To justify the ways of God to men. And mark that in the same venture, now here Milton is trying to justify why should Satan suffer? Why Satan should suffer? And why this suffering? So this suffering is caused by Satan himself, because he has not learned any lesson. Left him at last to his own dark designs. What is the design? That with reiterated crimes he might heap on himself damnation while he sought evil to others. Mark that. Satan is not learning any lesson. Satan still believes he could harm others, and therefore he is still plotting, he is still conspiring. And the more he tries to bring harm to others, the more he tries to obstruct the good, right? The more he puts himself under further suffering, further punishment. And enraged might see how all his malice served but to bring forth infinite goodness. That is another important point. Satan might think that he could really do some harm. But if God is God, if we believe that everything is done because he wills it, then it also is a part of God's larger design. So what apparently might seem to be a kind of a harm that is being done by Satan when he instigated Eve and we all lost paradise, but ultimately behind it is a greater goodness. Mark that. How all is malice served, but to bring forth infinite goodness, endless goodness. So let Satan design, let Satan think that he can bring about evil. But this is also just a part of God's design, and ultimately, whatever evil that Satan would try to bring forth will only result in some more goodness, grace, and mercy. You understand? Satan provoked Eve, and Eve ate that forbidden fruit, and Eve and Adam both fell, both lost paradise, only to be redeemed by the merciful God. Shewn on man by him seduced, but on himself treble confusion, wrath and vengeance poured. So man was redeemed by God's mercy. But Satan was always under some confusion. Wrath means anger, vengeance is revenge. And you know, if anybody is full with anger, full with indecision, full with a spirit to take revenge, he can never have peace. So Satan lost all his peace. Satan is actually harming himself and all of them who followed him. Forthwith, upright he rears from off the pool his mighty stature. So now Satan moves out from that lake. On each hand, the flames driven backward slope their pointing spires and roll in billows. Okay, now, so Satan is coming out and God left him free to pursue his wicked purpose, which I just mentioned to you. And now, mark that, in billows live in the midst of a horrid vale. Vale is valley. Okay. So now he just came out from that pool and he just went there where he could gather all his followers. Then with expanded wings, he steers his flight aloft high. He just flew up, incumbent on the dusky air that felt unuseful weight, till on dry land he lights. So now he flies above the lake and he gets down on some dry land in the hell itself. If it were land that ever burned with solid, as the lake with liquid fire. And immediately Milton makes it clear that there is no reason for us to think that Satan has got some reprieve. No, the position only changed from liquid fire to solid fire. He was earlier in a lake full of liquid fire. Now he has moved to a land which was burning also with solid fire. You have just to imagine and visualize. The important point for us to remember is that still it is hell, and in hell means suffering, endless, indefinite, infinite suffering. And such appeared in hue's color, as when the force of subterranean wind transports a hill torn from Pelorus, or the shattered side of thundering Etna. Now you have different words being used here. Try to understand. In line number 235, you have 33, 34, torn from Pelorus, or the shattered site of thundering Etna. Right? Thundering Etna, before that Pelorus. Pelorus is the Cape Pharaoh. It was northeast cape of Sicily. And Etna is, thundering Etna is the volcano in the east coast of Sicily. In fact, we should not really bother ourselves from all these scholastic references because they are a part of an epic whose combustible and fuel entrains, dense conceiving fire, sublime with mineral fury, aid the winds. So then spreading out his wing, Satan flew through the gloomy air, which felt his heavy weight till he descended on a dry land, still burning with fire, and the land in hell resembled in color the devastated scene when a fragment of rock is dislodged from Pelorus. I just told you, Pelorus is a Cape Pharaoh, northeast cape of Sicily, by the force of underground wind up from Etna. Etna is the volcano in the east coast of Sicily, by the action of the explosive material inside it. You know, in volcano, you have lava, and that explodes and results in great fire. So now, full of smell and smoke, and leave a singed bottom all in all with stench and smoke. So that is smell and bad smell and smoke. Such resting found the soul of unblessed feet. Look at that word, unblessed. another important phrase. Now, the feet of wicked Satan found such painful rest. So there cannot be any rest. We have already read that. In hell, there cannot be any rest. And Satan, who flew away from the lake, only could land on such a devastatingly difficult place, full of bad smell, smoke, and fire. Such resting found the soul of unblessed feet. Him followed his next mate, that is Beelzebub, both glorying to have escaped a Stygian flood. Mark that. And both of them are trying to make a case out of it. They think that, oh, it's their great achievement, right? Both glorying to have escaped means escaped the Stygian flood. So they thought that it is their own might and power because of which they could finally come out from that lake. But the reality is, as gods and by their own recovered strength. So they thought they were gods, they thought they had still some strength and some power by which they could easily come out from that burning lake. Reality was by the sufferance of supernal power. Sufferance of supernal power. That means the permission of God. So the supreme power permitted them to go out of the lake. That was the reason they were allowed to do that. But fools they were. Trying to ask you, the first meeting ended. You have any question, anybody?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, Shumon, carry on.
Sir, in line number 238, it says, both glorying to have escaped the Stygian flood. The Stygian flood means?
Stygian is hellish. Actually, Stygian is the adjective of hell, so it is hellish. It is pertaining to hell. Actually, Styx means the fiery gulf. Styx, or it is sometimes called hell. Styx is hell or the fiery gulf, and from there you have the Stygian flood. Is it clear now?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay then, so what I purport to do now, I would like first to share with you my PPT on the epic simile that I made, and I feel that might help you. So I'm sharing it with you now. See here. One important way in which Milton develops our picture of Satan and gives us the impression that he is a hero is through epic similes. And we discussed in length about the features of epic similes. Here I have just written lengthy and developed comparisons that tell us how big and powerful Satan is. For example, when Satan is lying on the burning lake, Milton compares him to the Titans. As I just mentioned, that we find Titans in the Greek mythology, who waged war upon Jove in Greek mythology. Then, at greater length, he compares him to a Leviathan. So actually, comparison of Satan with Titan was not one of the epic similes because you don't have any elaborated comparison. But the first epic simile you can say you find properly when Satan is being compared to Leviathan or whale that is so huge that sailors mistake it for an island and fix their anchor to it, with the result that they are drowned and eaten up. And I told you the significance of this epic simile, where obviously we are supposed to understand the nature of Satan, right? So whoever believes in Satan, whoever trusts Satan is supposed to be doomed. In other epics, these sorts of similes are used to establish the great size of or strength of characters, and on the surface, these similes seem to do the same thing. At the same time, however, the effect of these similes is to unsettle us. This is again one important point. Why is Milton using the epic similes? One of the reasons is that this helps us to know something properly in an elaborated fashion, sometimes even the symbolic significance of it. And yet another important part is it unsettles us. How? Making us aware that we really do not know how big Satan is at all. No one knows how big the Titans were, because they were part of a myth, because they were defeated before the age of man. The image of the Leviathan does not give us a well-defined sense of its size, because the whole point of the image is that the Leviathan size generates deception and confusion. So the more important point for us to understand here in this context is what size you have becomes subordinate to what purpose you are using your size for. Mark that. Satan deceives. More than anything, the similes used to describe Satan make us aware of the fact that size is relative. So it doesn't really matter much whether you are like a giant or whether you are just a pygmy, because ultimately you are unethical. And that we don't know how big anything in hell is. And especially in hell, it is very difficult, because when one of you asked me, sir, hell is compared to a bottomless pit, and then where has a lake come from, right? In the same manner, I can tell you that, well, in hell, nothing is definite. And when you talk about any size in hell, it is all subjective. Subjective means relative. The burning lake, the hill, or later on we will find the pandemonium. Okay, so this is something that I thought I should share with you. Now, I proceed further into the third speech of Satan, which is again a very important speech in the text. So after Satan is described, Milton now begins the third speech of Satan. Is this the region, this the soil, the climb is climate, said then the lost archangel. So it was very difficult for Satan to believe that, well, this was the place that they were dumped into. Is this the region, this the soil, the climb, said then the lost archangel? This the seat that we must change for heaven? Look at the pain. Look at the compromise that Satan must have been making. Oh, how different from heaven. Heaven was, I told you, heaven was a place of eternal happiness, eternal light, eternal comforts, eternal prosperity. And in contrast, hell is just suffering, no peace, no rest, darkness. This mournful gloom for that celestial light. Here you have not just gloom, gloom is despair. And in that despair, you have a mourning, you have a lamentation. And in heaven, celestial light. Celestial is divine, which never is burnt out. It's very serene. It's very peaceful. Be it so. Now, this is the real political leader. He is not going to accept his defeat, because if he is defeated, if he accepts his defeat, well, all his followers would lose their hearts. So the tragedy is that Satan, even if Satan has understood the harsh reality, he must not accept it. Be it so. Since he is obviously God, who now is sovereign, can dispose and bid what shall be right. farthest from him is best. Now he is trying to make, Satan is trying to make a case out of nothing. He says it is good, it is better that we are far away from God. God is so powerful. So God, if we remain away from God to a very, very far away place from God, perhaps we would not really be punished as severely as we would have had we lived closer. So he's trying to make a case out of nothing. Whom reason hath equaled, force hath made supreme, above his equals. Satan is repeating again that, well, he, Satan, and God perhaps were not really much different in power. It was only because of that thunder and lightning that God could outwit them, could defeat them. So still Satan is harping on the same belief that he is not much inferior to God. But the reality is that God is only one, and all others are God's subjects. Farewell, happy things, where joy forever dwells. Try to feel the pain of this great angel, Lucifer. Farewell, happy fields. He is now bidding farewell. He knows very well that he can never return to heaven, where joy forever dwells. Heaven is a place where it's eternal happiness. Obviously, you understand, by contrast, hell is a place where there is no joy, there's only suffering, only misery. Hail, horrors, hail. Now you have to be very, very alert, because what Milton has done, only a champion of a writer can do. He has, on one hand, to create sympathy for Satan. He has in him a Renaissance spirit, the Renaissance spirit. And because of that, Satan is to be presented as a victim who has challenged an autocrat and therefore is being punished. Mark now, hail, horrors, hail. Can really, on one hand, you say something horrible, and on the other hand, can you really hail them? Can you really support them, admire the suffering? Infernal world. Infernal is hellish. And thou profoundest hell, receive thy new possessor. I have purposely made them red, this two word, new possessor. And you have to understand the mentality of Satan here. Possessor. Actually, Satan suffers from a disease. The disease is that he wants to be the master. He wants to own, possess. He doesn't want to serve. He wants to possess. That's the problem. We know that a great ruler is he who is first a great servant. The problem with Satan is that he wants only to dominate. He only wants to own and possess. And therefore, he is now saying that, well, okay, hell is full of suffering. Hell is horrible. But then God is not here to rule. So he will be the ruler. And in fact, this is the spirit because of which he revolted against God. One who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. Now mark, brilliantly is Milton making this man, this Satan, a hero. Almost out of nothing. Try to see how he is trying to make a case, a very strong case for himself, and how he's trying to glorify his own position. He says, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. A true hero is one who remains unaffected by adversity. So just because our place has changed, just because it is a different time, well, my mind is not sullied. My mind is still the same mind. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. Very important lines. And we can always interpret these two lines in two opposite, diametrically opposite ways. What really Satan tries to convey to his followers? He says, well, we need not really be sorry for what has happened to us, because our mind is ultimately one that decides whether we should be happy or we should be in pain. He says the mind is its own place, and in itself. So what is Satan arguing? Satan says that whether we live in heaven or hell is actually completely dependent on how we think and interpret. So it is absolutely on me whether I be happy or I be sad. So he says in itself can make a heaven of hell. Sometimes, this really means what he says is really true. If you feel that, well, somebody is sick and yet he is not at all bothered by his sickness and he still finds peace, still he interprets that, well, his sickness is rather a kind of an opportunity for him to take rest. Well, he can turn that sickness into a kind of an opportunity, challenge into an opportunity, right? Like what we have been doing at this pandemic, right? We are not bogged down by pandemic. We are still trying to make the best use of pandemic, right? Now mark it here, Satan says that ultimately it is our own resilience of mind, our own fortitude that makes a difference. And therefore it is upon us that we will make hell and heaven, and not just really be very repentant. This is one way of looking at it. Another way is, if you logically try to interpret the lines, you find the inherent contradiction. Actually, what is a hell? Hell is a place, as we have read, hell is a place where you have no rest, no peace, no joy, no light. So if that is a hell, how can you change that hell into heaven? How can you? Because the moment you are in a hell, your mind becomes hellish. Your thoughts become hellish. Everything becomes hellish. If everything becomes hellish, if you don't have any hope, if you don't have peace, if you don't have light, if you don't have joy, how can you change that hell into heaven? And heaven is just the opposite. Heaven is happiness. Heaven is light. Heaven is comfort. Heaven is peace. Heaven is serenity. Heaven is blessedness. So, rhetorically, yes, Satan seems to be a champion. He is making a great speech. But if you delve deep into their lines, you understand that Satan's speech is full of ringing phrases expressed with a deliberate sonority. He is deceiving himself. He is deceiving his followers. Okay. What matter? Where, if I be still the same? Is he saying? Not at all. He has lost his divinity. That is the reason he has started thinking in an evil manner. So the whole argument is wrong. He says, if I be still the same, he is not the same. There is a drastic change. He is no more Lucifer. He is now Satan. And what I should be, all but less than he whom thunder hath made greater. Once again, Mark. Once again, he is trying to befool himself and befool others. He says, well, there is not much of a difference, only the thunder. Here at least we shall be free. Once again, another contradiction. He talks about freedom. We know what is hell. Hell is adamantine chain. I hope you have not forgotten that phrase. He talks about freedom. What kind of freedom is this where you have been in unbreakable chains? Again, let me tell you, this chain is not physical chain. This is a metaphorical chain. This is a kind of a bondage. That means certain qualities, certain rights that you enjoyed earlier in heaven no longer is there for you to now enjoy. And he talks about freedom. The Almighty hath not built here for his envy, will not drive us thence. Here we may reign secure. Another important word. This is actually the real problem of Satan. Satan wants to rule at any cost. He suffers from that disease, that desire of lording over everything. That is his problem. And he is now arguing that, okay, if they have been banished from heaven, no way they should repent. At least they got some place where there would be no God. And Satan can reign here, rule here. And in my choice, to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Mark that. So it's very clear, absolutely clear, that the real intention of Satan is, at any cost, rule. And the irony is that he wants to rule in hell. And how can a person, or how can somebody rule if that person is himself in adamantine chain? So certain things which are very apparent are not apparent to Satan. Satan is again and again taking shelter into big words, into big rhetorics, and with his brilliant quality of argumentation is trying to befool everybody. Better to reign in hell than serve in hell. That is again a very important, oft quoted statement, but you go into the depth of the line, once again, everything will be clear to you. He says, well, it is better to reign in hell. First of all, in hell, there is no scope to reign because you yourself are a slave. How can a slave reign or rule? So there's no question of ruling. So it is only rhetorics. And serve in heaven, actually in heaven, when you serve, you are still divine. Service in heaven is also a kind of a rule. Perhaps Satan has never realized this, and that is the reason he has fallen. So with wider significance, we have to understand what Milton is advocating here. If you live in the realm of God, then your service to God itself is something that empowers you. Satan ironically talks about power, but he doesn't understand the meaning of true power. But wherefore let we, then our faithful friends, the associates and co-partners of our loss, lie thus astonished on the oblivious pool, and call them not to share with us their part in this unhappy mansion. So it's not that Satan doesn't understand his present condition, okay, and he wants to talk to everyone, or once more with rallied arms to try what may be yet regained in heaven. Mark that. He still believes that once again they could assemble, they could fight, and perhaps they could still fight and get something of heaven, regain in heaven, or what more lost in hell. After all, is there anything to lose further? And if there is nothing to lose further, is it not better that we assemble and fight again, fight against God? Well, who knows, we might get at least something. Okay, so you understand how brilliantly has all these speeches are drafted by Milton, right? And Satan is really made in the mold of a hero. But if you can analyze the lines properly, if you can understand exactly how the whole thing is developed, then you understand the implicit irony and the contradictions. So my discussion is over. Now I leave it to you to ask me questions. If you have any question to ask me, till line number 270, we have just finished the third speech of Satan. Any question to ask? Anybody?
Sir, will you explain this line? What reinforcement we may gain from hope, if not what resolution from despair?
Line number? Which lines are you referring to? Can you tell me the line numbers?
190 and
109,
189.
189.
189 and 190, two lines are there. What
Yeah.
reinforcement
What
we may
reinforce?
gain?
Yeah, I got it. What reinforcement we may gain from hope, if not what resolution from despair. Okay, fine. So this is the ending of the second speech of Satan, where reinforcement actually means renewed strength. Okay. So first he says that if we can get a kind of strength from hope, actually there is no hope, and still he is trying to be optimistic, and therefore he says that, well, if we can get some renewed strength from optimism, okay, or if that is not possible, then he says, if not means if that is not possible, then, well, at least let us have some firm resolution from despair. What resolution? Resolution is firmness, and despair means hopelessness. Okay, so if it is possible that we can be optimistic, let us derive strength from that optimism. If that optimism is not at all possible, well, at least let us try and gather a kind of firmness, a firm resolution from our hopelessness.
And sir, this you said that Leviathan example is a example of the reference of Leviathan is an example of epic simile.
Which one?
Then why
Which one?
this
Leviathan?
Titan?
Leviathan, you said?
Yes.
Yes. Leviathan is an epic simile. Yes.
Then before that, the Titans and Typhons, they are not epic similes.
No, not because you don't have elaborate description there. Try to understand when Satan is compared to Titan, that is just a mere reference. Read the lines and you will get them. It is simply connected with that monstrous size, where we are told that Satan has a monstrous size. In that connection, suddenly Milton mentions Titanian or earthborn, that ward on Job, and you have, in the same breath, you have Bryaros and Typhon, right? But not much. That means, I told you, if you remember, that in epic simile, actually the simile continues for a number of lines and a number of features. So it elaborates the comparison and makes us understand the inherent characteristics. Okay, and when the comparison is done with Leviathan, there we know that Satan is not just as big as Leviathan, but also as deceptive and as a cheat as Leviathan.